Time for me to dive into the discussion. I'm joined by Amrit Mathur, the advisor to Dream 11 at this hour. I'm also joined by Andrew Miller, the UK editor of Cricinfo, Emily Crick, an England fan, and Akshay Lumba, who's an Indian fan. Amrit, let me kick this off with you. England's biggest challenge would be similar to the one that Australia faced back in 2017 after they took a 1-0 lead in Pune, sustain the pressure on the home side?
Yeah, I think they're in having shocked India in the first game. India has to bounce back now to stay alive in the series. And I think it's a major challenge because India will resort to its time-tested tactic of preparing a raging turner. And that will be a challenge for the English batting, which is relatively inexperienced if you take out Root and Stokes. So if they are challenged with a turner from day one, as Rahane just mentioned in the pre-match interview, I think it's going to be pretty tough for England. But last game, India would be disappointed the way they played. Virat Kohli spoke about body language. He spoke about intent. He spoke about more from the bowling unit. So India has to take all the moves. But if you are playing on a wicket which is turning square, I think it will be with India.
Andrew, would you really think that that will be a big challenge for England, given that many of these players have played in India as part of A tours? Will ranked turners pose a big challenge?
Well, it poses an absolutely massive challenge to their batting, but I actually disagree with that point. I actually think raging turners will probably help England a little bit more than it hinders them, because I think India's spinners, all notwithstanding an excellent showing from Jack Leach in the fourth innings last test, I think England's spinners are not as good as India's. And therefore, if you present them conditions in which they can turn the ball square and sort of take out the difference in class between them, I think you actually close the gap. You look at what happened. I look back to a test match, I think it was in Mumbai in 2004, when Michael Clarke got 6 for 9. Michael Clarke's part-time spin basically broke India's batting because the ball was turning so sharply, even for a part-timer, that all balls were unplayable. So I'm not so sure that's a wise way to go. And besides, the last time England won out in India in 2012, who were the star spinners? There was Panesar and Swan. If you bring England's spinners into the game, even if they're not the best spinners in the world, they're still going to be a challenge. So interesting tactics, and I look forward to seeing what happens.
Emily, let me come to you. Well, England's rotation policy has been criticised, and people have talked a lot about this rotation policy. But Joe Root says that the men he has brought in, they're like-for-like replacements, and though they haven't had much game time, but they are fresh in mind and body. How much advantage will then England derive out of bringing in fresh players for this test match?
Well, I can understand why they've gone for the rotation policy. As a fan, obviously, I'm disappointed that Jimmy Anderson won't be bowling. But I do recognise that there's a lot of cricket to be played this year. And so they kind of have to rotate the players. But I'm excited about the thought that Stuart Broad will be back, because he bowled really well in Sri Lanka.
Akshay, let me come to you. Would you say for England, the key will be keeping Kohli quiet?
Well, no, I don't think so. I think Kohli had a really, really impressive innings in the fourth innings of the last test. Batting like that on a day 5 pitch, if you saw his dismissal, it was a freak dismissal. Otherwise, I think he would have gone on to a big 100. So I think that would have given Kohli a lot of confidence. He hasn't played much cricket since 2019, Test cricket, that is. But that innings was key for Kohli, and in these sort of situations, he generally goes on and scores big hundreds. So that confidence booster for Kohli will be key. And the rotation policy from England will certainly help the Indian batsmen, I think. The bowlers coming in, the seam bowlers anyway, may not be as good as an Archer or an Anderson. So it can only help the Indian batsmen.
Andrew, coming back to you about this question on Virat Kohli, Joe Root mentioned in his presser that the key would be to keep Kohli quiet. They know how good a player he is, and he is going to score runs on the tour at some point. And England really has to concentrate on delivering their best balls to him.
Well, they certainly do. I think. It goes without saying that Virat Kohli is the best batsman in the world. Joe Root is putting in a very, very good show of being in the best form in the world. But Kohli, there's no questioning his his enduring class. So there's absolutely no doubt that England will have a major plan for him. But they've got a plan for all of the batsmen. That is the key thing. If you get over obsessed by focusing on getting the kingpin, you end up in a position where you've got guys like Rishabh Pant and Shubman Gill can tear the game apart from you. You've got Pujara was the unsung hero in Australia recently, where Kohli wasn't even playing in the key matches as well. So yes, it goes without saying that Kohli is a huge part of this. But I think the bigger thing actually is if England do manage to put pressure on Kohli and do manage to, if not win, then certainly don't lose. Given what we saw with Rahane taking the captaincy and winning and turning the series around in Australia, you already got a little bit of a sign in Kohli's interview the other day that he's getting a little bit fed up with the questions about who should be leading this side. Right. So the bigger thing for England is if they can keep the pressure on as a team, then that puts pressure on Kohli as a captain. I don't think they need to overly obsess with the fact that he's a brilliant player. They know that already.
Amrit, Kohli loves these occasions when there's a big challenge. Kohli loves such occasions. But one of the things I think that he will have to give a test of is his tactic. Nasser Hussain, yes, earlier in the series said that he is not very happy with Virat Kohli's tactics. Do you think that will come into play on the first day from the time he picks the 11 who will go out into the park?
Well, the captain has to make difficult decisions even before the match starts. For instance, is Akshar Patel going to play? Is there space for Kuldeep Yadav? What do you do with Hardik Pandya? We don't know what the 11 is of the Indian team. But I think a lot will depend on how you read the pitch and how the pitch actually behaves. But apart from Kohli, from my standpoint, I'd be very interested in how the test match goes for Rohit Sharma. He's not at the best of form with the bat in the last games in Australia, even in the first test match. So there could be a bit of anxiety about how he performs. But the good news is that Shubman Gill looked extraordinarily good. He looked composed, he looked in control. He looked so mature while playing in the first game at Chennai. So more runs from Shubman Gill is good for India. But we'd also want Rohit Sharma to regain form and give us that good start at the beginning, so that you lay the foundation of the test match on what could be a difficult pitch. And batting fourth in these conditions would be very, very challenging.
Amrit, let me ask you, who would you wish to see in this team, Kuldeep Yadav or Akshar Patel, or if Hardik Pandya is fit?
That's for me?
Yes, that's for you.
I think I'd go for Akshar Patel if the pitch is turning square and he's a tight, accurate bowler and he gives you more variety in terms of a off spinner and a left-arm spinner in the team. So I would go with Akshar Patel if the wicket is turning square and favors spin bowling.
Emily, let me come to you. Moeen Ali has been drafted into the team, but his record in India is unimpressive. Would you say then there's a lot of responsibility now on Jack Leach, who has performed in the last test?
I have a lot of faith in Jack Leach. I think he's a really strong player, and the way he fought back after in England's second innings in the last match showed that he's really strong. So I think Jack Leach is going to do really well. In terms of Moeen Ali, we don't really know because we haven't seen him play for a while, but hopefully his batting could help us as well.
Well, I'll have to end the discussion by asking one last question to Andrew. Well, Andrew, this test will not see Jofra Archer in action, who has experience of bowling on the Indian tracks. Would you say that will be a big miss for England?
A huge miss, absolutely vast. I mean, this is the one thing that England didn't want, because obviously they got their rotation policy whereby they've sent Mark Wood home to have a rest, and they don't really have a like-for-like replacement. But even if they did, I don't think realistically there is a proper replacement for Archer. The way he bowled in that first innings, using the new ball, pretty much the same way he bowled throughout the IPL, proper attacking lengths, really hitting the seam hard and digging into the pitch with 90-mile-an-hour pace. He has the skills to transcend pretty sluggish decks, and he showed that in the IPL. He showed that in that first innings that really opened the game up for England. I'm not convinced, even bringing someone like Stuart Broad back, I'm not convinced there's a like-for-like replacement for what he puts into the England team in overseas conditions.
Right, if Kohli manages to win this test match in Chennai, then he will tie with MS Dhoni, become the most successful Indian captain, be tied for 21 test wins. Thank you very much, Emily, Amrit, Andrew and Akshay for joining me on the broadcast.